I always thought I could handle anything that came my way. I built my life around resilience, priding myself on keeping a level head through every challenge. So, when I found undeniable proof that my wife, Meredith, was cheating on me, I didn't react with shouting or violence. Instead, I stood in our bedroom, numb, gazing at the scattered sheets and catching the faintest whiff of an unfamiliar cologne. A hollow ache spread in my chest, but I made no sound. The realization felt simultaneously shocking and strangely inevitable. Maybe I had sensed a shift in our marriage long before that moment, yet I had chosen to dismiss every sign. In that stillness, I recalled the times I had brushed aside her increasing late nights and the distant look in her eyes. My pride wavered. I always believed in loyalty, but maybe I was a fool for expecting it. The evidence of her betrayal forced me to rethink everything. My throat felt tight, but my mind was oddly clear. I decided in that moment that I would not confront her immediately. Instead, I would watch, gather every scrap of information I could, and wait for the perfect time to strike. I pretended nothing had changed. Each day, I observed Meredith, watching for the telltale signs of guilt or deception. She hid her tracks decently, but the cracks were visible if you knew where to look. A phone call taken in the garage, a stifled smile at a text she hurriedly deleted. These details were jigsaw pieces forming a sordid picture. I began documenting everything: phone logs, new receipts, even her changed grooming habits. No confrontation erupted. I simply collected data like a detective seeking airtight evidence. When she asked if I wanted to meet her new friend from the volunteer group, I feigned disinterest. Later, I learned that this so-called friend was Victor, a smooth-talking charmer with a wide smile. I recalled our awkward handshake at a fundraiser, his eyes lingering on Meredith far too long. At night, I would lie awake, planning. Confrontation wasn't enough. I wanted a punishment commensurate with the betrayal, something that would catch them both off guard. Rage alone wasn't my style. I craved a meticulous takedown, a slow, devastating tumble. Though a part of me felt sick over stooping to this level, I couldn't deny how firmly revenge had truly taken deep in my heart. I installed discreet cameras around the house under the guise of a home security upgrade. It wasn't difficult to convince Meredith that a few extra precautions were necessary, especially since she had occasionally voiced concerns about burglaries in our neighborhood. Through these hidden lenses, I confirmed my suspicions. Phone calls laced with giggles, suspicious errands, and glimpses of Victor arriving when he assumed I wouldn't be around. I endured sleepless nights watching those recordings, my stomach twisting each time I saw them together. It wasn't simply their physical closeness that rankled me. It was the soft, intimate tone of their conversations, the way she touched his arm as though he were her rightful partner. Yet, I kept my face blank by day, greeting Meredith with a practiced smile. Behind the scenes, I safeguarded every shred of evidence. I captured phone records, downloaded text messages, and even traced Victor's background to discover he had a penchant for risky investments. The more I learned, the more resolute I became. Anger alone would achieve nothing. I wanted a so perfectly orchestrated downfall, a masterstroke of planning that would leave both of them reeling, wondering how they'd never noticed the trap slowly closing in. I realized I needed an ally, someone who owed me enough to keep things confidential. I contacted a longtime friend who worked as a private investigator, a man well-versed in collecting incriminating evidence. We'd once served together in the military, so our bond was built on trust. He spent weeks tailing Victor, snapping photos of his midnight escapades, capturing receipts from shady moneylenders, and confirming rumors about his impulsive gambling. Each new piece of data made my plan sharper. I wanted not just to expose Meredith's infidelity, but also to exploit Victor's weaknesses. A man with gambling debts and a fragile ego could be manipulated into rash decisions. Meanwhile, I maintained my unassuming demeanor at home. When Meredith flashed me forced smiles over dinner, I offered calm politeness. Every brief kiss on my cheek felt like a test of whether I suspected anything. But I never showed my hand. Patience became my virtue. If I lashed out too soon, they might slip away or come up with excuses. No, I needed them comfortable, lulled by the illusion that I was clueless. Only then could I deliver a blow from which neither would ever truly recover, broken in every sense. I orchestrated a public event that would serve as the stage for their downfall, an upcoming charity gala to which both Meredith and Victor were intricately connected. Meredith had volunteered to help organize it, while Victor was among the donors. Perfect. I let them remain oblivious to the seeds I was planting. First, I secured the audio and video proofs of their affair, selecting the most incriminating clips. Then, using my private investigator's findings, I created a dossier of Victor's gambling records and shady financial dealings. I also gathered correspondences where he bragged about unethical exploits. Meanwhile, I continued to play the part of the doting husband, agreeing to attend the gala by Meredith's side. Her relief was palpable, as if my compliance reassured her that I suspected nothing. Yet, behind closed doors, I fine-tuned every detail. Arrangements were made with the event coordinator, who owed me a favor, ensuring the gala's presentation would go exactly as planned. After all, I wanted maximum exposure for their indiscretions. My heart pounded with anticipation, a twisted exhilaration at the thought of unveiling their betrayal in front of everyone. I told myself it was justice and craved, the perfect reckoning they both deserved. The night of the gala arrived with a buzz of excitement in the air. Meredith spent hours dressing up, her hair swept into an elegant style, her lips painted a vivid red that seemed to taunt me. I complimented her quietly, playing the part of the supportive spouse. We arrived at the venue, a spacious ballroom glittering under chandeliers, where donors, socialites, and volunteers mingled with drinks in hand. I noticed Victor almost immediately. He stood near the bar, wearing a tuxedo and an air of misplaced confidence. Meredith squeezed my arm a bit too tightly, her eyes drifting across the crowd toward him. I pretended not to see. My heart thumped in my chest, but I kept my composure. After some polite small talk with acquaintances, I slipped away to the audio booth. There, the coordinator gave me a nervous nod and confirmed that everything was set. At precisely the right moment, after a series of dull speeches, my prepared video would take over the screen. Nobody else had a clue what was about to happen. I returned to Meredith's side just as the MC announced a special presentation. That was my cue. I quietly observed as the lights dimmed. When the video started, everyone turned toward the large projector screen, expecting a glossy promotional reel for the charity. Instead, they were greeted with grainy footage of Victor, captured during his clandestine meetings and shady deals. I heard scattered gasps, whispers of confusion, and even a nervous laugh from someone who thought it might be a technical glitch. But as each scene unfolded, the horror on the faces around me grew. There was Victor, counting stacks of money with a smirk. There he was again, scribbling signatures on documents that hinted at fraud. Then came the part that took my breath away. He and Meredith in my own living room, speaking in hushed tones, their bodies close enough to eliminate any doubt. My chest tightened. Though I had planned this reveal, the raw pain still found a way to claw at me. Meredith's gasp was audible. She spun toward me with wide eyes, her face draining of color. I stood there, expressionless. Victor, on the other side of the room, tried to rush forward, but startled guests blocked his path. The MC, stunned and pale, fumbled to end the video. By then, the damage was done. Chaos erupted the moment the screen went dark. People clamored for answers, some turning their attention to Meredith, others to Victor. I felt a strange numbness, as if I were floating above the scene, watching the drama unfold. The event coordinator attempted to apologize to the audience, his voice cracking with anxiety. A handful of security personnel hurried to contain the situation, but the whispers and angry muttering only grew louder. Meredith's eyes brimmed with tears. She trembled, trying to form words, but failing. Victor managed to force his way through the crowd, his face a storm of fury and desperation. He glared at me, chest heaving, but before he could speak, someone snatched him by the arm. I recognized my private investigator friend, calmly explaining that he had evidence of multiple illegal activities tied to Victor's name. A hush fell over the crowd at that revelation. Meanwhile, Meredith reached for my hand, her grip shaky. I yanked my arm away. For a long moment, I looked her in the eye, letting the gravity of her betrayal sink in for everyone to see. Then I turned and walked out, leaving her sobbing in the center of that stunned crowd. The fallout was immediate. Victor was taken into custody for questioning about the fraudulent paperwork, and the story splashed across local news outlets. Meredith found herself ostracized by the very volunteer community that once adored her. People whispered behind her back, condemning her duplicity. Our phone rang endlessly with friends and family offering shock, pity, or unwanted advice. I kept my distance from Meredith. I moved into a spare bedroom while divorce proceedings loomed. Yet, amid the turmoil, I felt oddly vacant. My brilliant plan had gone off without a hitch, but the satisfaction I imagined wasn't as sweet as I'd hoped. Perhaps I'd invested too much of my soul in revenge. Meredith tried to talk to me, her face drawn and desperate. She wrote letters of apology, slipped them under my door, begged me to at least look at her. I refused. Instead, I poured my energy into ensuring the financial aspects of our divorce would favor me. I had countless records of her infidelity, including photographic evidence. My lawyer assured me that a judge would look upon my case favorably. In the evenings, I would stand by the window, staring into the dark, wondering why my triumph felt so hollow. When the court date arrived, I expected it to be the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. Meredith appeared gaunt, her normally vibrant features dulled by stress and regret. She gazed at me with red-rimmed eyes, clutching a folder of her own documents. I felt a flicker of pity, quickly crushed by the memory of her betrayal. Our lawyers went through the motions, presenting evidence and statements. The judge took in the details with a stoic expression. My lawyer emphasized Meredith's infidelity, unveiling photographs, text transcripts, and witness testimonies. Meredith's lawyer attempted a defense, claiming emotional neglect, but the judge seemed unimpressed. The outcome seemed clear. I would secure the house, a large portion of our shared assets, and freedom from the woman who had shattered my trust. Yet, in the quiet moments as the judge reviewed everything, I found myself studying Meredith's trembling hands. Despite my anger, despite the betrayal, I realized that the woman who once laughed with me, planned a future with me, was now just a husk of her former self. Perhaps that was the true cost of my revenge. When the judge finally ruled in my favor, I felt neither glee nor relief. I left the courtroom with a swirl of emotions I couldn't fully name. My victory was legally complete, yet I didn't feel like celebrating. Friends congratulated me on a well-earned settlement. They said she got what she deserved, and maybe they were right. But as I returned to the half-empty house we once called a home, the silence pressed down on me. I walked from room to room, recalling fragments of better times, holidays, lazy Sundays, spontaneous laughter. Each memory cut deeper than I expected. Soon, I noticed a letter on the kitchen counter. It was from Meredith, her handwriting shaky. She asked me to grant her 5 minutes of my time in person, promising she would never bother me again if I refused. My first instinct was to tear it up. I had enough closure, didn't I? I had exposed her lies, destroyed her lover, and won in court. Yet, something tugged at me. Maybe curiosity, maybe a lingering need for answers. The next day, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe we used to frequent years ago. I arrived early, my stomach tight, uncertain why I was even there. Then she walked in, eyes downcast, shoulders slumped. She approached slowly, as though afraid of scaring me off. Without waiting for an invitation, she took the seat across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Meredith cleared her throat and began. She apologized in a trembling voice, taking full responsibility for her betrayal. There was no shifting of blame, no claims of intoxication or confusion. She admitted she had sought excitement, convinced herself that our marriage had grown stale, and fallen into Victor's manipulative orbit. As she spoke, tears slipped down her cheeks. She said she had been selfish, that she realized too late how deeply she had wounded me. My anger flared, fueled by the memory of her lingering touches with Victor, the laughter they shared behind my back. But something stopped me from lashing out. Perhaps I recognized the futility of yelling at a broken woman. Instead, I asked her why she had never tried to talk to me, to tell me she was unhappy. She had no defense. She only said that she was a coward who feared facing the truth. That admission lingered in the air between us, a harsh self-condemnation I hadn't expected. Her remorse seemed genuine. Meredith told me she understood that forgiveness might be impossible, that I had every right to hate her. She said she just wanted me to know she was sorry, that she had never stopped loving me, twisted as that might sound. She wasn't asking for reconciliation, only a chance to speak her truth. I looked at this version of her, makeup smeared, hands trembling, voice cracking. It was a far cry from the confident woman I once admired. Despite the anger still pulsing in my veins, I felt a pang of empathy. For all my intricate planning, I had never paused to consider that I might not emerge from this unscathed. My revenge had been thorough, but it left a gaping wound inside me. I told her she had betrayed not just me, but the entire foundation of trust we had built. She nodded, agreeing with every word, her eyes filled with regret. We spoke for nearly an hour, rehashing moments that led to our downfall. Some confessions stung, others seemed trivial. Yet, in that raw conversation, I finally saw how broken we both were. I walked out of the cafe, unsure if I'd made the right choice by meeting her. Weeks passed, and I threw myself into reorganizing my life. I placed the house on the market, deciding it was time to shed those walls haunted by betrayal. My lawyer sent over finalized paperwork for me to sign, transferring assets and concluding the divorce once and for all. Each time I lifted the pen, I recalled Meredith's tear-stained face in that cafe. I told myself I was signing for my own good, securing the fresh start I deserved. Still, I delayed. I realized that revenge, while momentarily satisfying, had a bitter aftertaste. The ruin of Victor, the spectacle at the gala, the cold, public humiliation. Every detail I had choreographed felt both brilliant and cruel. While Meredith's suffering seemed justified, I questioned what became of my own humanity in the process. I found myself staring at old wedding photos, memories from a time when I believed wholeheartedly in our union. The man in those pictures looked so sure of tomorrow. Now, my tomorrow felt like a blank page. One morning, I received a letter from Victor's lawyer informing me that he intended to contest some of my claims. Instead of anger, I felt exhaustion. The web I had spun was still ensnaring us all. Finally, the day came when I could wait no longer. I took the divorce papers to the study, the same room where I had first reviewed evidence of Meredith's infidelity. The echoes of old anguish lingered in that space. With a deep breath, I signed each page, finalizing the marriage that once defined me. That evening, I found myself driving aimlessly through the city, memories tangling in my mind. I ended up outside the apartment where Meredith had moved after she'd lost most of our assets. Unsure why, I parked across the street, watching the lights in her window. I felt neither hatred nor yearning, just a dull sadness for what we had lost. She deserved the consequences of her choices, but maybe I had turned myself into something monstrous in seeking to destroy her and Victor so thoroughly. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer confirming the divorce filing was complete. The knowledge settled over me like a heavy blanket. There, in the quiet darkness, I understood that my plan had ended exactly as I intended. I had exposed her, ruined her lover, secured my future. But I also realized that true victory might not be measured in someone else's downfall. I switched on the engine and drove away, leaving behind a life I once cherished, certain of only one thing: my revenge was complete, yet I felt more hollow than ever before.